because we never stick to the script anyways. So what is the point?
Yes, sir.
Hello and welcome to our continuing coverage of Russian President Vladimir Putin's visit to India. It marks a pivotal moment in the long-standing India-Russia partnership, with high-level talks expected to deliver concrete outcomes in energy, defense and trade.
Indeed. And President Putin arrived in New Delhi on the for the 23rd India-Russia annual summit last evening. His first state visit to India since 2021. He received a warm welcome by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who later hosted him for a private dinner, setting the tone for discussions that are unfolding as we speak at the Hyderabad House today.
Indeed, Mark, the summit agenda is extensive. We are getting to you the latest visuals now from Hyderabad House in New Delhi, where the two principals, Prime Minister Modi and President Putin, will be beginning their summit-level talks shortly. These are the visuals coming to you from Hyderabad House in New Delhi. Remember, President Putin is on a two-day visit to India for the 23rd India-Russia Annual Summit. Both countries celebrating 25 years of their strategic partnership and the 15th anniversary coming up of the elevation of their ties to a special and privileged strategic partnership.
Indeed, and the leaders are expected to deepen economic ties. They are expected to expand cooperation in oil and energy supplies, also strengthen defense collaborations and various other aspects.
Absolutely. Now, the leaders are expected to deepen economic ties, expand cooperation in oil and energy supplies, strengthen defense collaboration, including missile systems, and explore new avenues in trade and investment.
And in fact, this meeting, it comes at a time when Russia is navigating sanctions and shifting global alliances, while India, of course, is balancing its own strategic interests amid tensions with Western powers. So for Moscow, New Delhi, remains a dependable partner that has resisted Western pressure campaigns. And for India, Russia continues to be a critical supplier of energy and defense technology. Ramesh?
Absolutely. Now, the symbolism of Putin's presence is significant, but beyond the optics, the summit is expected to produce tangible agreements that reinforce the special and privileged strategic partnership between the two nations.
So day two of the Russian President Vladimir Putin's visit, it began with a ceremonial welcome at the forecourt of the Rashtrapati Bhavan in the national capital. Now, Prime Minister Narendra Modi and President Draupadi Murmu received the visiting leader ahead of bilateral talks and the 23rd India-Russia annual summit, which is currently on.
Right, so Friday is day two of the Russian leader's visit to India. His first engagement of the day was a ceremonial welcome in the forecourt of Rashtrapati Bhavan. Afterwards, President Putin played a wreath at Rajghat in New Delhi, paying homage to Mahatma Gandhi during his state visit to India, marking a key ceremonial engagement ahead of bilateral talks.
Well, both Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the Russian President Putin are scheduled to issue a joint statement at the Hyderabad House. And later in the evening, the visiting President, Putin, is to meet his Indian counterpart, Draupadi Murmu, at the Rashtrapati Bhavan.
And at around 9 p.m. India time, President Putin will depart from New Delhi, bringing his two-day state visit to India to an end. So all eyes on the much anticipated India-Russia 23rd Annual Summit that is beginning any moment now at Hyderabad House in New Delhi. Here we can see the two principals, Prime Minister Modi and President Putin, shaking hands on the lawns of the Hyderabad House before they enter the summit venue for delegation-level talks.
Indeed, and a lot is expected from this visit, as we have been saying. There are several areas of cooperation and where there could be an expanded roadmap for deeper cooperation in this special and strategic partnership, especially in the area of people-to-people ties, because there is expectation on agreements that would work out for Indians to be working in Russia and likewise for Russians to be working in India. And apart from that, of course, maybe long-term commitments as far as India's energy security is concerned. And on the defense front, of course, this dialogue is continuous.
Indeed, so we can expect both sides to discuss about the entire gamut of bilateral, regional and global issues, including but not limited to trade and investments, oil and gas, energy cooperation in general, civil, nuclear energy, space cooperation, as well as other key important areas, including space, and also the global issues confronting the world at large, including the Ukraine-Russia conflict. So if you're just joining us, we're getting to the latest visuals of the Indian and Russian leaders at Hyderabad House, shaking hands, posing for photographers ahead of the much anticipated summit level talks, the 23rd edition of the India-Russia Annual Summit that's beginning any moment now in New Delhi.
Our correspondent Siddharth Bharadwaj is joining us from the newsroom now with more inputs. Siddharth, you have been, looking at this visit from the point of view of how the media also is covering it. So in this respect, first you can tell us, how has the media been covering this event from, let's say, the morning? Let's look at the morning newspapers for one.
Oh, first of all, I would like to tell you, Mark, that this is a very significant visit by President Vladimir Putin, and he's coming to India after 2021. It's a huge gap, and it's a significant visit in various terms, as both the sides are expected to take up various issues. There are various MOUs which are expected to be signed between both the countries. The details of MOUs are yet to be out, and as and when they will come, we'll let you know definitely. The day 2 of President Vladimir Putin started off with ceremonial welcome at the forecourt of Rashtrapati Bhavan. We saw how President Putin came and he met Prime Minister Narendra Modi there at the Rashtrapati Bhavan, and also the Honorable President of India, Draupadi Murmu. After that, President Putin went to Rajghat to pay respects to Father of the Nation, Mahatma Gandhi. And we also now are showing our viewers the visuals wherein both the leaders are there at the Hyderabad House. Now, since this is a very significant visit, the entire print media, Mark, and in fact, not just print media, the social media and the satellite television, they all are covering this historical visit by President Vladimir Putin. We saw some of the newspapers, English newspapers by Indian English newspapers wherein there are headlines totally covering this historic visit of President Vladimir Putin. We also saw how Prime Minister Narendra Modi himself went to the airport to receive President Vladimir Putin, and he hugged him as well. And later on, we saw a picture wherein both the leaders are sitting in the car, and it's all over the social media. In fact, Prime Minister Narendra Modi also shared the picture on his X handle. So this goes on to show that the warmness in the ties between both the countries, Mark, and how the Indian print media has covered this significant and historic visit by President Putin. Now, when you talk about the visit and why it is important in my analysis, there are certain sectors which are very, very important when it comes to this visit. These sectors are trade, these sectors are defense, these sectors are energy, these sectors are health, culture, people to people connect. All these sectors, apart from the other sectors, they combine and make this historic visit by President Vladimir Putin. When you talk about trade, we are talking about trade since the morning, since yesterday. The total trade between both the countries stands somewhere at 68.7 billion, and wherein the Indian exports are less than 5 billion US dollars. So this visit is a great opportunity and platform wherein both the leaders will talk it out and narrow that trade deficit, wherein India could send pharmaceuticals, could export rather pharmaceuticals, agri products, food products, chemicals. Apart from that, there are some other products as well. When you talk about defense, it makes it a central pillar of the ties between both the countries, whereas there are lots and lots of talks which are expected to come up, including the joint production of the fighter jets, including S-400, the agreement on S-400 and S-500, and also after that, it comes the energy ties between both the countries. We all know that how India is diversifying its energy sources, and Russia is a key partner in that. When both leaders, right now they are at the Hyderabad House, when they'll talk, there are some, points that will be taken up when it comes to the energy ties between both the countries. All this, Mark, is coming when the world is witnessing wars and conflicts in different parts of the global world. Apart from that, there are certain countries in the global world reeling under the tariffs imposed by the United States. Also, Mark, one thing which I want to mention here is that all this is coming at a time when India is walking towards the path of Make in India, Atmanirbharta, which is self-reliance, and also Vision 2047, Vikasit Bharat at 2047, wherein India will be celebrating the centenary of its independence and is expected to make everything under the sun. So make in India, make for the world. We make in India, we are sending to the global world. And in that context, in this visit, in the context of this visit to Russia, it will also increase the economy of the country of Bharat, which currently, which is on the path of becoming the world's third largest economy in the world. And we have shown, Mark, you cover economy and you cover the business. You very well know that how India is progressing when it comes to its GDP. The Q2 growth is exceptional, which goes on to show that how India is excelling in every sector, and how today the world is looking at India for collaboration in various sectors. Back to you.
Right, Siddharth, do stay on. We'll come back to you momentarily if we can on this broadcast. Let me take a moment to introduce our guest and welcome him on this broadcast. Joining us is Ambassador Yashvardhan Sinha. He is a former High Commissioner to Sri Lanka and the United Kingdom. We'll be joined momentarily by another guest, Professor Rahul Mishra from the Jawaharlal Nehru University as well. Ambassador Sinha, welcome to this broadcast. Since we are meeting you and talking to you the first time as part of the India-Russia summit, let me take you back to yesterday. We saw some interesting visuals coming from New Delhi at the airport there. Prime Minister Modi breaking protocol to personally receive President Putin at the airport. The proverbial hug was there for all to see, and also a power ride in the Prime Minister's car, the motorcade that brought him from the airport to the Seva Tirth, the rechristened official residence of the Prime Minister. Your thoughts on how the visit has shaped up so far?
Thank you for having me on your show. I think this visit is very significant. It comes at a very critical time. If you recall, President Putin first came here as president of the Russian Federation in October 2000. And I believe this is the 23rd annual summit. But for the first time since the outbreak of the Ukraine-Russia war, President Putin has come to India. The last time, I think, was in 2021. And the very fact that he has come to India for this summit shows the importance that he lays and that both countries lay on this summit and our bilateral relations. It is indeed a special and privileged strategic partnership, and it's for all to see the personal bonhomie and the personal equation between the two leaders. I believe Prime Minister Modi has gone to the airport 6 times before to receive foreign leaders. This time was special, the seventh time. Not only did he receive President Putin at Palam, but he also, President Putin also accompanied him to the Prime Minister's house for a private dinner in the Prime Minister's car. So this was very significant because it sends a message not only to Indians and Russians, but globally, because this time-tested, long-standing friendship has stood the test of time. And I think the fact that they are meeting today officially at Hyderabad House, the agreements that we expect, and more importantly, the discussions that they have will shape the future of bilateral relations for quite some time.
Ambassador Sinha, people are looking at the relationship as having huge potential in terms of, economic value. The question is that, if Russia has sanctions, India has tariffs, there is this issue about how to do business with a country that has sanctions. How is one to fulfill the potential of the economic potential of this relationship? I mean, should we be creating some special purpose vehicles to have trade that can work, between our two countries that avoids the international system?
So I think this is a very important question, and this is something that will occupy the minds of our leaders during their discussions, because as your correspondent said, and I was listening to him carefully, the total bilateral trade is $68.7 billion. Indian exports is only $4.9 billion. And because of our enhanced intake of Russian oil, this imbalance has occurred. There was an imbalance earlier, but it's now come into sharp focus. So I think the roadmap for 2020-30 for strategic cooperation, economic cooperation between India and Russia, which I believe is going to be discussed, will be very important, because I think it will also show how the two countries can trade with each other despite the adverse circumstances. I recall that when sanctions were imposed on Iran, not UN sanctions, but unilateral sanctions, Iran was an important energy partner. We did find a way, at least initially, to trade with Iran. If I remember correctly, there was an escrow account in an Indian bank, and we did manage to do that. So I think there are ways and means which experts, I'm sure, will find. One thing is clear, that India will continue to buy energy from the cheapest and the most reliable sources in the world, simply because it is critical for our growth and development. And I think we should not and we shall not allow third parties to determine how and where we buy from. Obviously, sanctions on companies like Rosneft and Lukoil will impact the intake, because they are major suppliers from Russia. But I'm sure our leaders and, of course, the delegations will try and thrash out how this cooperation in the energy sector, which is critical, as I said, for India's economic growth and development progresses.
Ambassador Sinha, as some commentators have said in the last 24 odd hours, that given the fact that the Ukraine-Russia conflict may be nearing its end game, as it were, India and Russia might be looking to for a post-Ukraine conflict scenario in their bilateral ties. So the question is, how do these two sides make their ties future ready in terms of the next big idea, as it were, in their relationship? Protection of investments, maybe incentivizing exports. So how do you look at the future prospects of this relationship if things change in the near term going forward?
When I tuned into your channel, and I was struck by President Putin's visit to Rajghat. He obviously has been there many times before, but the symbolism of him paying obeisance to the father of the nation at Rajghat was not lost on me. And especially when we are in the time of conflict, the Russia-Ukraine war. So I think whether it's the end game or not, only time will tell. But I think there is a certain amount of war fatigue on all sides. There are serious attempts being made on the negotiating table to ensure that peace is ushered in the region. And I think India and Russia need to look forward to see how they can strengthen their cooperation. I think one of the primary areas, apart from defense and energy, is boosting economic cooperation. And as I said earlier, we really need to diversify in terms of our exports to Russia, which are basically primary goods, agricultural products, tea, rice, etc. We need to look beyond that. I mean, obviously, marine products comes to mind. Pharmaceuticals is a very important component because we are a major exporter of generic pharma to all over the world, in the West in particular, but also the global South. And I think Russia would benefit immensely if they are to take advantage of India's capabilities in this area. There are, of course, other areas like IT and IT-enabled services where India is quite advanced, and I think cooperation in that would be mutually beneficial. Defense, of course, as I said earlier, the links are very strong, will continue to remain so in the foreseeable future. One area which I read somewhere was interesting, and that is the Arctic shipbuilding industry. Can India provide some sort of inputs, or at least be part of that shipbuilding industry? Because as you know, Russia has been very active in the Arctic region. So I think there are various fields where I think the two countries could play a role. There is also a talk of a labor mobility agreement. That would be extremely good, because that would mean that India would be able to provide skilled personnel to Russia, where there is obviously an issue regarding the population growth, and that's not just Russia, but all over the West. Right. And I think this could serve as a model, perhaps, if such an agreement is concluded, for other countries in the West.
At this point in time, let's introduce you to Professor Rahul Mishra, who joins us from the School of International Studies, JNU. Thank you very much, Professor Mishra. Let's take that point forward about a mobility agreement. And, Ambassador Sinha was really talking about how businesses can expand in between India and Russia, business potential. It really can't expand if, we are only doing businesses from government to government. At the end of the day, I mean, it has to be people to people who are doing businesses, and also professional to professional. How much, weight would you give to this mobility agreement for this potential, economic potential to take off?
Look, we've got to understand that this annual summit between President Putin and Prime Minister Modi is not just another annual summit. There is a very specific context to it. And in that context, whatever agreements, MOUs we come up with, India and Russia, will be directed or motivated by the developments that are happening between India and the US. And labor mobility, the skilled worker mobility, of course, plays a very important role. The question here is how much Russia can accommodate, how hungry Russia is to have Indian professionals there. Of course, the blue-collar workers is certainly something that India and Russia are working on, but there are sectors like advanced technology, IT sector, other sectors, services sector, doctors, engineers, professionals who could work in Russia. And this labor mobility, the skilled worker migration, is something that I hope India and Russia will agree on. But I also wanted to add a point here that in India-Russia partnership, business as usual will not work anymore. If India and Russia together want to give a message, convey a message to the world in these times when both India and Russia individually are challenged at the international level, India's growing role as a leader of the global South and Russia within the Eurasian sphere, it is very important for them to come up with new ideas. And I think to boost their bilateral business, to boost India's share, I think joint ventures in defense sector particularly are very important. It can no longer just be a buyer-seller relationship, and we also need to move beyond BrahMos. So I think S-400 and S-500s are welcome, very delightful items for Indian defense people. But something concerning the joint production is something that I expect from this summit level meeting. The second is, if India wants to just expand its trade using conventional methods, that will not work. Your agriculture sector is not sufficient, because Russia itself is a very powerful country when it comes to agricultural exports. It has been before the Russia-Ukraine war. Russia was supplying most of the agricultural commodities to Europe. So there again, I think pharma is a very promising sector, but so are rare earth minerals, semiconductor sectors, IT hardware, because India has traditionally been an IT software giant, giving all the opportunities to Russia, virtually, and I'm talking about Indian corporate sector. So IT hardware is something on which India and Russia could work together. Oil, of course, has been, the energy sector has been a big shareholder in India-Russia partnership. But there again, we have to find new ways to avoid sanctions. We have to find a mechanism whereby India is not put under greater pressure, and Russia also somehow navigates these new sanctions by the Americans. So I think there is a need to go beyond the conventional methods of bilateral trade, think out of the box, and work on new areas, critical minerals and new and emerging technologies. Like I said before, new ways to promote trade in pharmaceuticals, in health sector, in health services, hospitals, and our hospitality sector. The tourism sector is very important. In health sector, I think nurses from India and doctors from India could also find a place in Russia and contribute massively to their health sector, which is not as strong as Indian health sector. And skilled migrants, I think, is where I'll pin my hopes on, along with tourism sector, where India and Russia could do a lot together.
Very interesting comments there, Professor. I'm intrigued by what you said at the beginning, that it cannot be business as usual anymore when it comes to India-Russia bilateral trade and commerce. And I want to pick you up on that, and I sort of welcome your comments on that as well. When we talk about trade, India-Russia trade in particular, infrastructure and incentives go hand in hand. How do you incentivize Indian exporters to reach out to the Russian market? How can we assure the government of India or Russia or both ensure protection of the investments? Number one. Number two, connectivity is important when it comes to infrastructure or boosting trade and commerce. And what can you tell us about the status of the international north-south transport corridor and also the Chennai-Vladivostok maritime corridor? How are they coming along?
Well, Chennai-Vladivostok corridor, there is a lot that needs to be done to make it something that meets international standards and to make it fully functional.
Right.
On connectivity front, investments in infrastructure, India is open to this idea, and Russia is more than welcome in the infrastructure sector. There are a lot of areas where India is very comfortable working with its friends and like-minded countries. Northeastern states of India have recently witnessed a lot of investment from Japan and increasingly from Australia. So I think infrastructure building is where Russia could do a lot with India. Shipbuilding, as Ambassador Sinha earlier mentioned, is a very important sector where India and Russia could work together. We can have JVs, we can also have the Russian investments in India, or the other way around, Indian investments in Russia and producing more ships, because India's requirements are massive. Now, India has also launched the Sagar Mala initiative, which is building ports and upgrading the maritime infrastructure of India. I think that is one critical sector where trust is a very important element. And Russia ticks all the boxes when it comes to strategic trust, the capacity to invest and operationalize projects, implement projects. So I think maritime sector and port building, port-related infrastructure is something that is worthy of our attention. And in that context, I think in terms of Russian investment in India, we could have more SEZs. along our ports or along our coastal line, which is massive, more than 7,000 kilometers, but also in Russia. So India's Far Act East policy, which aims to connect Russia, and it is an extension of India's Act East policy, I think could be a very good tool. And all we have to do is extend the elements, the pillars of cooperation that we have as part of India's Act East policy with Southeast Asia, with countries of the South Pacific, and also East Asia. So I think on that front, a multi-dimensional approach to cooperation in building trade, in building greater trade partnership is important. And I think there are two countries which are important here, important examples. One is South Korea, with which India has been working very earnestly on shipbuilding and defense production areas. Not really just the defense, but also the civilian shipbuilding areas. So I think that is one area of cooperation. With Singapore, we have been working on infrastructure, on building advanced cities, smart cities. That is one area in which India and Russia could work together. And also with CLMV countries, the countries in Indochina, Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, Vietnam, our infrastructure, IT, and English language training programs are very important. When we look at India-Russia, the relationship over past more than 7 decades, a major pitfall is that our people are not familiar with each other's languages. So India's Hindi or English language and Russian, we should have more higher education cooperation, collaboration. And that will also facilitate in familiarizing people, and Mark earlier mentioned the people-to-people connect. I think that people-to-people connect that we have with countries like Australia or Singapore or the US is somewhat missing in case of Russia. Whether it is inflow and outflow of Russian and Indian tourists, or it is the exchanges at the higher education level or think tank exchanges, there is a lot that can be done. And through people-to-people connect, greater people-to-people exchanges and their networking, I think a lot can happen. And this is where the corporate sector can play a very important role. I mean, tourism and hospitality sector are primarily led by the corporate sector. So they could play a very important role in boosting trade. And this boosting of trade is not just commodities and conventional methods. This could reach higher levels through people-to-people contacts and
Right, Professor, do hold your thoughts there. I hate to interrupt you there.